All right. Good morning to those of you on the East Coast. Good morning also to those of you on the West Coast. I'm your host, Brandon Choi, co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited, and thanks so much for joining us wherever you're watching from. Today, we're going to take a trip back down memory lane on this special edition anniversary episode of the said film that we will be discussing today. And that said film is, of course, Lost Boys: The Thirst, released on October 12th, 2010. The film acts as the third, or I should say, is the third installment of the Lost Boys franchise as the Frog brothers find themselves face to face with the original head vampire. And I know that that is a trope that we have within that franchise, but this is the original head said vampire. With that in mind, I won't be alone as we take a trip back down memory lane. Today's guest is an actor, an accomplished playwright, as well as a director. However, aside from all that, he, of course, is an OG Frog brother portraying Alan Frog, one half of the iconic vampire hunting duo in the Lost Boys franchise. It is my pleasure to welcome onto the show Jamison Newlander. Let me bring him on now. Jamison, hello.
Hello. How you doing? Nice to be
Good,
here.
good, good, man. Absolutely. So, well, first and foremost, how are you doing, man? It's a pleasure to have you on this morning.
You know what? Doing pretty well. It's a rainy day here in Los Angeles, and
I'm
I
jealous. It's snowing here.
is that right? Yeah. So I guess
Yeah,
everywhere we got some weather, and it's pretty good. I'm doing. Thanks for putting up with me doing it in my car. I just dropped off. These days it's sort of a hectic. It's like I got a couple of kids. You drop them off. I drop them off at school, and then run off and do various other things to advance
absolutely,
my stuff. So but I'm doing
absolutely,
well.
absolutely. So, just to hit the ground running, can you? I want to, talk about just that idea of coming back, right? Whenever you're doing a role and you don't always have the intention that you'll ever come back and do it and return to it. And in this case, it was decades later. So can you talk a bit about that and receiving that information of knowing that you would be revisiting this character? Because just to be technical, aside from the third installment, it was supposed to initially happen in the tribe. So can you talk a bit
Right.
about knowing that you would be revisiting this character?
Yeah. So first of all, I love that you're highlighting the thirst. I don't think I've done a show or that specifically was talking about the thirst, about Lost Boys: The Thirst, because I thought a pretty cool movie. I mean, so yeah. So I'll set the tone for you. I'll set the scene for you, which is that. So it's like ever since we did Lost Boys in '87, it came out. It's like we there was always talk of a sequel, and there were a lot of big players involved. There was Joel Schumacher, the director. There was Richard Donner, who produced it, um,
Sure.
and Warner Brothers and the screenwriters. So everybody kind of had this. Everybody had a piece of it, and I think they all couldn't agree for a long time on what the sequel was going to be. So finally, 20 years later, in 2006, I think they did The Tribe, and all through The Tribe they were saying like, hey, yeah, Alan Frog's going to be in it, Edgar's in it, but Alan Frog's going to be in it. And I was like, okay, that sounds great, but they were just filming, they were already filming. you know
Yeah.
and so they got to the end of filming for the Tribe, and they were like, no, we're still planning to have you in it. And so they scheduled a special day down in LA. So they shot, I think for the most part, they shot the second Lost Boys movie, The Tribe, up in Vancouver is where it was. And so down in LA, we did a special day of shoot, me and Haim. They brought us out. We were on the beach, and then the idea was that would be, the continuation. I think it didn't work out the way they thought it would. I think that they ended up putting it in the special features because it was cool that we were doing it, but at the same time, I'm not sure it was very well thought through story wise. I was like, if anybody's seen it, like I had this long hair, I was like gonna be the head vampire, I guess,
Right. Yeah.
and it was, I think, an interesting idea in theory, but I just think it didn't play out that well. And so they put it in the special features, and they're like, okay, that gave us a little bit of leeway to to do something different for the next movie. and the tribe was pretty successful. It was, a lot of the fans were disappointed that it didn't have more of the original cast, but at the same time, it was successful. They made some money on it, so they did the Thirst, and or actually, you know what, the way we did it is this. So when there was, oopsie, when they did the premiere at Comic-Con of the tribe,
Right.
Corey Feldman was like, okay, look, we got to make our move right here. We want the Frog Brothers to be a part of the next movie, so we got to come to the panel as the Frog Brothers. And I was like, no, bro, let's not do that. There's other people in the movie, let them have their glory. And he was like, nah, don't worry about it. Nobody cares about the panel, like, in the long run. That they want to see the Frog Brothers, is what he was saying. So we got up there at Comic-Con, and it was a surprise to everybody. We dressed as the Frog Brothers. We came into the panel. We got some big laughs, and I think Warner Brothers right there was like, okay, that's, we got to do that for the next one. So, Feldman was right, hats off to him. He really worked it and got it right. And, to both of our credit, we popped on that panel and like just kind of charmed the audience and stuff. It was a lot of fun, So that's what kind of led to the tribe. And, I mean, when we were doing it, you were saying about like coming back to the role. There was a time when it was like, oh yeah, cool, we're gonna do it and this and that, and make a little money, make a little, get it back. And then as we were headed, we shot it in South Africa. Actually, we shot Lost Boys: The Thirst in Cape Town. Right. Because that's how it goes. It's like you get a good deal from the production crew, and they bring us in, but they're using mostly other South African actors. And so we went there, and Feldman was like, have you thought about the role? Have you thought about what it's going to be like to revisit it? And I was like, you know what? I haven't really. Like, right. I was just kind of dealing with the logistics and excited that it was happening. And so there was a moment where I was like, okay, I got to focus in on this and really think about, what does it mean? What's up with Alan Frog these days? What's he been doing for the last 20 years? Kind of thing. And so, it was really cool in that way to revisit it, and, kind of challenging. I'm 20 years older and still trying to capture the same, essence of Alan Frog, but at the same time, Alan Frog's 20 years older too. So, kind of thing.
Gotcha. And you were just commenting on that journey, that perilous journey, right? Of getting from what we have with the tribe and everything coming to fruition in the Thirst. So I'm also curious, knowing how things work in the background, business wise too, because you are credited even though in that actual cut you aren't seen, you're still credited. So I have to ask, I'm assuming that means that you still get those residuals, you still get payment on it, and that deal or that agreement was already made, because people don't understand that don't really get the stuff that go on behind the scenes, but that is something that is pivotal that can still be a thing. So
yeah, totally. I get, it's like I don't make a ton of money on residuals from Lost Boys, but a little bit. It's nice, a little bit of bread. And I haven't really looked closely if it's Lost Boys, what's playing. Is it Lost Boys: The Thirst? Is it Lost Boys: The Tribe? Right. I should look closely at it, because I hope I'm still getting a little bit of cash for it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So switching gears and diving deeper into the Thirst, going into that idea of, as you said, approaching where Alan Frog is and trying to have a way that makes sense to progress that character. Can you also talk about like that discussion of, and it's been 15 years at this point, but what happens with that character that drives, raises the stakes, so to speak, of what's happening with that character, and what is at stake with the relationship with your brother, and then just with him as an individual.
Yeah, so it's like, beginning to approach it, looking at the script and being like, okay, this is what this is what happens. I shouldn't give anything away, right? I mean, it's early in the movie, but there's some Alan, I don't know, we go, might go to the dark side a little
Right,
briefly,
right,
you know.
exactly.
Yeah, and so that was really interesting to kind of deal with and be like, okay, so what's it like to hate vampires and then also find yourself in the shoes, in those
Yeah,
shoes. So,
yeah,
and so that conflict that was created, and that's kind of like that was a way in for me. It's like, okay, there's this conflict within my character, and what does that mean? How does that play out in life when we have conflicts? What does it mean? It makes us more angry, or makes us more upset about things, and so that's kind of where I think I stemmed from, where I kind of rebuilt the character there, and it's like, for example, like take that line, they have that line early on where I say, it's the attack of Grandpa Munster,
right,
which
right,
was
right,
great.
right.
I loved it, call back to the first movie.
Yeah,
And I remember sort of struggling with it a little bit because, in the first movie, like, it's a laugh. It's a laugh line, the Eddie Munster line. And so it's tempting to be like, oh, that's a laugh line. But I had to go back and remember I didn't play it as a laugh line in Lost Boys.
yeah,
It was very serious for me. And so that was kind of another little way in, was like, okay, cool. Even though there's comedy here, let's remember back to the Lost Boys, which is that I didn't really realize there was comedy, or I didn't play the comedy, while we were doing it, which is a good way of, it's like my character is tough, it's like my character is really tough. And so, it's like, I can't be asking for the laugh, I gotta be
right.
just really playing it.
Right,
So,
because I was going to say, I had a chance to also go back to the original film, and being the film geek, film nerd that I am, listening to the commentaries, and Joel was the person featured, talking about the process of making the first film, and
yeah,
him discussing with you all, with you and Corey, just that idea of, yes, it is a comedy, but I guess the comedy comes out of how seriously you guys take it, because I
yeah,
guess what he had emphasized to use that idea, I suppose, of being commandos and being GI Joes, in terms of how seriously you took your vampire hunting. So
yeah,
I guess in speaking to that too, and talking about making sure that you got back into those shoes of Alan, could you also share, because this is another, even I'll go into another business aspect too, that is, a lot of people don't really think about unless you're on the other side, is, I know with this film, uh Philman was, from what I understand, an executive producer, and a lot of times when you're getting that producer credit, it allows you a little more creative
mhm.
freedom to be able to have say in how things go. So was what was transpiring, that journey of Alan, already there, or were there instances where you were able to say, you know what, Alan wouldn't do that, like you were given license to take ownership of that character and what he would and wouldn't do?
It's interesting, so it's like, I'm the kind of actor that, there are times when I might say, you know, I mean, I definitely, if it's needed, I would say, hey, this doesn't seem like Alan, or this, or can we try it this way instead? But I also, my first instinct is to try to do it the way they want it, like,
Yeah,
it's like my job is to take what they want and then breathe life into it. And
sure.
so, that's what I was trying to do. And I don't know that there were many, I don't think there were really any times that I can think of, on the Thirst, where I was like, no, that doesn't seem right. I was like, that this does, it seemed to capture Alan pretty well. Like for my big scene, the scene that was, in the taxidermy scene, where we sort of see me for the first time, or, for the first time in present time. It was a little tricky because, so it's like, with Feldman as, executive producer, he was, he was involved in the story. He was, and so we got to that scene, and he kind of came to set with a couple of other ideas than what was in the scene. And that was tough. It was tough for me to navigate, because I was like, it's like I came prepared with that scene. I knew those lines. I knew the shape of that scene. So he wanted to change it, and it was really hard actually. And I was a little depressed actually after that scene because I didn't think I got it. I didn't think I nailed it. Because like if you know what you're doing, if you have your lines down and you have the shape of the scene down,
right,
then you might have a sense of like, oh, cool, that went really well, or that that
yeah,
take didn't go as well or whatever.
sure,
When you're scrambling like I was, I didn't, it's like the new lines and ton of scrambling. I didn't really have a sense of how it was going, and I was really sort of depressed because that was my big scene, and I was like, I don't know if it went well. And the next day, I think they noticed that I was down about it. And the next day, one of the producers came up to me, actually the main producer came up to me, and he was like, just wanted to cheer me up about it. And he was like, look, we got it. We got it. Like, I understand what you're saying. Like, you were struggling in some of the takes, but we got a great take. And so we're thrilled. And I was like, that's great. That's all I really care about. I mean, like, I trusted them that if they were happy with what they got, that I was going to come across well. So, it was a little tricky that way. I was like a little bit like, if you imagine like, we're doing this movie and it's like after 20 years and we're, 20 at that point, 23 years or whatever. And like, I want to do a really good job, I want to, and then kind of to feel like I might have blown that scene or didn't, so I was really happy to hear that they got it. And then, when I saw it, it's like, it came off well. I like that scene. I think we all did a good job in it.
All right, excellent, excellent. And you had commented on the distance of time between doing the character for the first time and now years later with the sequel.
Yeah.
Obviously, of having that amount of time, being an actor at that time, Jamison at that time versus Jamison now, I know that there are physical aspects to what happened in the first film, and also you were provided an opportunity to be physical in this film with what you were allowed to do. Can you talk about that, of being prepared for the physicality of what you had to do in this film? Because that's being able to physically do things now versus how you were 20 years ago is completely different.
It's true. I'm not 16. I wasn't 16 anymore, and and that's already 15 years ago. So I still, fortunately I still have good, like I keep in shape, and I have good physical, like I'm not like, I don't want to get the impression that I'm like always doing yoga, but like I do yoga, I stretch, I do voice work and stuff. So
sure.
I was still in decent, my instrument was still in pretty good shape. But yeah, it was different. And also, it was different in some ways of like, being older, etc. But also since then I had gone to conservatory. I studied theater. I did theater in New York and kind of around the country for 10 years, and even longer than that, all through my 20s. And
so stage combat.
Yeah, stage combat, all that stuff. So by the time we got to The Thirst, I was really, I knew a lot more. I knew how to do that kind of stuff a lot more. And I actually did all of the fights. They trained me on all the fights.
Nice.
The stunt people ended up doing the most of the time on the ones you see on screen. It's mostly the stunt people. But, they had me do them all so that I could do them. And, we could sort of use the stunt people as we needed to and me as we needed to, when it was close up.
Right.
And that was really cool. And I actually got some cred from everybody on set because, we would be rehearsing these things, and then, when I would really get it, they would be, I got some cheers, we had like, there's this scene, I forget if they used it, but there's this one thing where I kind of spin around and I'm like, I have two swords, the two katana swords, and I'm spinning around, and I was doing that. It was, you remember that? Yeah. And it was cool as hell. I mean, the one you see is the stunt person, but it was really cool, and so, I had that going for me. I was a little bit more of an experienced actor at that point,
All right, excellent. So as we're wrapping up this film, and we kind of close the chapter, so to speak, on vampires, there is a tease of other creatures of the night, if you will, as this film closes. And I'm just curious, is there ever any intention of continuing that story? Because they leave you off in an interesting place, and they leave the franchise off in an interesting place in terms of where it could possibly go.
Yeah, totally. I remember, that in the movie, that that we have a little tease of what what might be to come. I think that the sequels, we might be done with actual sequels.
Okay.
For Lost Boys, that may not be true because it's Hollywood and
Never say
people
never.
can reinvent things. What Feldman and I have been talking about lately, the last couple of years, and we've been pitching to various people, would be a really cool idea to do, I think, is a Frog Brothers show. That may be the future of the franchise for now, that it's not, that we don't have to have the pressure of a full-on sequel, that we can do a side story of the Frog Brothers and what's kind of become of us, and the various things that we're into. I would love that. I think there's a lot of cool opportunity for some comedy and some good horror and stuff like that, and maybe handing down the torch to the next generation of vampire hunters or something like that. I mean, all of which is like with how Cobra Kai did that. It's like, it's not quite a sequel. I mean, it is kind of a sequel, but it's a sort of a different story.
Yeah.
And I think it would be great to do something like that, and we're actively pitching that. We'd love to do that. And so it's tricky, like, way back at the beginning, like I was saying with the, that there's so many people involved. There's Richard Donner's estate, Joel Schumacher's estate, plus
Right.
Warner Brothers. So it's tricky. And then Warner Brothers, we were kind of getting close, and then Discovery bought out Warner Brothers, and then the whole slate of producers changed.
Yeah.
And so we're working on it. It's no guarantees, but it would be really great to do that.
All right, cool. So whenever we do these anniversary shows, Jamison, it's always fun to get what the response is with the two options that we have here. The first one being, what you're most proud of, and then what you feel you could do differently. Not necessarily a regret, but what you feel played out differently. So in talking about this installment, you can address it to this installment, or you can address it for the trilogy overall. And you can do it in either order. What are you most proud of, and what would you like to do? Wish you could have done differently if you had a chance to go back there.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I'm most proud of with The Thirst is that I think that it was I think we achieved, bringing the Frog Brothers into adult life.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of, I mean, I'm confident in my acting ability, and I'm really proud of how, even with feeling like I can act well, there's all sorts of things that can happen in life that can affect how you perform,
Yeah.
And it's like, in the middle of, we did Lost Boys, The Thirst, 2009. I think it was not too, like when we filmed it, I had just had a son. My son Nathan was just born. We actually brought him to South Africa with us. He was 1. It was not a great idea to bring him to South Africa. It was like, we had just gotten him sleeping, and then it's like 2 12-hour flights, and then and then like a 12-hour time difference. Was very tricky. But so I'm really proud of how I navigated all that. Was able to really to still deliver a really good performance, and still kind of juggle all the things that were going on in life, and the different place that I was at the time.
Yeah.
Than as a teenager.
Right.
So that's my that's some of the things that I feel really good about, and I feel like I really took it seriously, and and like talking about that thing about the Grandpa Munster line, it would have been possible to not key into that, and be like, oh, okay, cool, this line is a laugh line, and kind of go with that, but I didn't. I was like, I've kind of employed that actor feeling, and being like, let's look closely at this, let's play this real, and then see what the audience reacts to it. So I feel really good about that.
All right,
I think regarding regrets, I mean, regrets have to do with my life and my inability to, or my inability to like break through to like bigger level of, I mean, not fame for the sake of fame, but fame for the sake of doing bigger projects, throughout my life. I'm still working on it. But it's like back in 87, I didn't go to the Lost Boys premiere. I was off doing theater, which was great. I was happy to be working. I was proud of being able to do theater, but I really should have gone to the premiere. And with Lost Boys: The Thirst, there was something similar where it's not like I didn't go to the premiere. I did go to the premiere, but my life was a bit of a mess after Lost Boys came out. My life was a bit of a mess in certain ways, and I really wanted Lost Boys: The Thirst to be that thing that kind of brings me to the next level. And it did. It brought me to another level, because this is now like film I was doing in adult life, where, you know, rather than being like, oh, I did this movie as a teenager and then I was doing theater, you know, it's like I was beginning to build a real adult film credit list.
Yeah.
And so there was some progress there, but I wanted to make more of it at the time than I did. So I think that's a regret.
Gotcha. Well, with that being said, as I mentioned at the top, Jamison, thank you so much for, you know, carving out some time this morning
Totally.
after dropping off the kids. Really do appreciate it. Of talking about Lost Boys: The Thirst. Before I let you go, can you tell folks where they can find you?
Yeah, totally. So I'm on social a bunch. I do a lot on Instagram. You can often find me on Instagram. I'll respond to messages if you follow me. I'll often follow you back. I'm kind of building my social that way. So Jamison Newlander, I think it's just Jamison Newlander on Instagram. Yeah. Jamison Newlander 1 on X. I think it's also Jamison Newlander 1 on TikTok.
Okay.
And so those are kind of my 3 main social medias that I do. I have a YouTube show where I'm going back to revisit the old locations of Lost Boys.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Right. And that's really cool. It hasn't taken off, you know, in the way that I'm looking forward to, you know, trying to do that. But at the same time, it's a lot of fun, and, you know, people are really digging it, you know, and that's cool. So, and that's my YouTube is Jamison 611 for some reason. That's what I chose when I signed up for YouTube. But you can find me there, or you can just Google me, or find that show off of my my other social. And the other one thing is that I'm also building a one-man show that should be ready this year, called Summer of '86.
Gotcha.
About that year, about like doing Lost Boys and all that kind of stuff. So pretty soon you'll be able to find me in some local theater as well.
All right. Awesome. So with that being said, I want to thank Jamison Newlander for hopping on and talking Lost Boys: The Thirst. I'm your host, Brandon Choi, co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. You can find me at Brandon Choi ENT on X and Brandon Choi _ENT on Instagram. With that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. Be safe out there, and see you guys soon. Bye now.
Awesome, man. Good to talk.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me.